So limited optics is a division where you can basically run almost any gun you want in USPSA with a single action trigger, a big old mag. Well, the only stipulation is that it cannot have a compensator or ports in the barrel, pretty much. So for a long time, people were bracketing the shooting sports based around action type, and I think this was largely due to a flawed understanding, because eventually the fear of a single action gun like this was replaced with double action, single action guns that are basically like this, which in a lot of ways are very, very similar shooting experience to the mighty 192011s. But now in 2024, we have limited optics kind of optimized around the 2011 style pistol in 9mm, but the fear is that the people who have enjoyed their pistols being kind of the meta for the carry optics type divisions can't compete with the single action only guns. So I hollowed out the safe and I brought 6 different pistols to the range. The P320 SXG is the ultimate form of the P320, and it is a striker fired gun. The trigger is not as good as its cohorts, but the frame is pretty awesome and the weight is comparable. The P226 XFive Sport is a single action only gun that did not have a home until limited optics became a thing in USPSA. So I've been itching to get this gun out here and see how it compares to 2011s. The Vudoo Gunworks Priest is going to be sort of the analog for the popular format of a 5-inch 2011 pistol with an aluminum grip. This particular one has a short rail, but it's basically all the stuff that a 2011 is. The Canik Rival steel frame is very popular in competition shooting. It's a little bit heavier than the polymer framed versions of it, and it has an amazing trigger out of the box. Bul Armory Air is a 5-inch 2011 style gun with a polymer grip, just to kind of give the Prodigies a little bit more of an elevated appearance. So that's a good analog for like the Prodigies and stuff that might be in LO, but with better features out of the box. And I'm using the Tanfoglio Stock 2 and not the Shadow 2 because frankly, I just like the Tanfoglios a lot better. The frames are superior in my opinion. So I brought this as an excuse to shoot this gun that I like. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm David, and before we go any deeper, I do want to say hello to the fellow dads in the audience, and I hope that you are still crushing it, and help you out with this. Why is a leopard terrible at hide and seek? Because they're always spotted. Now, this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a long time because frankly, I was most curious as to whether the 226 XFive can kind of hang with 2011 style pistols. That was really kind of the impetus for wanting to make this video, because I love the way that the gun fits in hand. I love the feel of it, but does it really stack up against a proper 2011 since it's in kind of that price point? And unrelated to this gun, I was honestly surprised by the results that I got. As always, there's a disclaimer that my results will vary from your results, and my level of skill is going to be different from your level of skill and your skill set. So your mileage may vary, but I was honestly shocked by the results, and we'll get there. First drill that will be attempted is going to be bill drills at 25 yards. This is just using a from the low ready position start to see what the times are going to be, and we'll stack them up for points. And before getting on camera, all of the guns were zeroed to the ammunition that I'm using, because some of these guns I've let people borrow. I didn't know where the zeros were, and it was a good thing that I did because they needed the help. And we're just going to be measuring kind of shot to shot stability, how the gun settles in given my grip, and just see what the hits are. This is going to be hit vector scoring, so that's going to be point shot divided by the time it took to shoot them, and that's going to give us kind of points to kind of pass out so we can get some winners and losers crowned. So here we go. Mr. Priest is going to go first. Let's go. A little bit different feeling the way that the steel frame gun versus the aluminum frame gun. It's in the same ballpark, honestly, side to side. I can say that the P320 is not as nice in hand as the 226 version of the XFive, but it's still pretty nice in hand. Here we go. This is annoying because 2 of my CR 1632 batteries have given up the ghost, so I have 1 CR 1632 that I'm gonna have to rotate between 3 different guns, but let's get into it with the Bul Armory. Let's go. I feel like I've got more ability to drive the gun than the other 2011 style guns. It doesn't feel like it hits in the hand. That's a 0.8. The shots are gonna be in the left, but I just kind of gravitated toward left side of the A zone aiming at, but they're exactly where the dot is. It's a lot snappier. The hits are probably all fine, and I doubt the time's a whole lot different. It's a 355 with a 110 first shot, so it'd be like a 345, 335 maybe, if I had a better first shot. Definitely more recoil, like especially compared to that Bul. That's a 358 with a 115 first shot. I'm not sure why the first shot's so bad on these. Tanfoglio 25-yard bill drill, safety on. It doesn't hit in the hand quite as hard as the Canik, and I think it's largely due to how the back strap is shaped on the Tanfo. Next round is going to be a practical array where I'm going to put 2 shots on the close target, 1 on that target, 2 shots on the middle target, 1 on that target, 2 shots on the far target, and finish with 1 there. So we're going to do 2 reps of that. So the left target that I'm shooting 1 time is going to be behaving like steel, so any shots outside the A zone will count as a miss, and that's minus 10 points. We're going to start with the Bul Armory and go first. We're going to start at pointing at this stick right here. Oh, there's a miss there. That's not good. The mic on Mr. XFive as well. I can say that I like the way that the XFive recoils a bit better than the Canik. Ooh, there's a high one on that far shot. Now, before I show you the actual results, I do want to just kind of talk through some more commentary on the different pistols, because what I felt behind the gun absolutely did not reflect in the scores at all. I can tell you what my preference was, but the math is going to show us a different result. So just kind of ranking the guns based on my preference and what I was experiencing behind the gun, I can rank them in kind of this order. Probably the gun that I enjoyed the most was going to be the Bul Armory Air. The plastic grip and the shape of the grip, it just seats deeply into my hand, and it's very hard to kind of mess up the index on the gun. I just felt like I could drive the gun hard. Maybe that led to some overconfidence, maybe not. And because the single action only 2011 style platform is what I'm most comfortable with, number 2 was going to be the Vudoo Gunworks Priest. And because I'm most familiar with the single action only platform, the Vudoo Gunworks Priest would have been the number 2. The number 3 was going to be the 226 XFive. I just love the way it fits in hand. It does have a hinge trigger, and because I'm not used to hinge triggers as much, probably paid a performance premium on it. And in that same vein, the number 4 would have been the Tanfoglio Stock 2. I really like kind of the shorter barreled gun. It's about a 4.5-inch barrel. The balance of the gun is really great. It shoots really nicely, but it has the most exaggerated kind of recurved trigger face on it, which required kind of a different fundamental to grip the gun and stabilize it through trigger pulls. The hinge trigger guns definitely paid a small penalty because the fundamental from each gun to the next was a little bit different. The number 5 would have been the P320 X5, the steel frame gun. It feels nearly as good as the 226 X5, but you know, the trigger's not quite as nice and the gun doesn't move quite the same as the 226 X5. And last place, I would say the Canik Rival-S. It just felt the most violent of the guns to shoot. The frame geometry doesn't feel like the gun sits in my hand particularly well, but how it feels in hand is nowhere near as important as to how it performs. But of course, when you bring math into the equation, the results tell a different tale. In 6th place was the 226 X5. And this was largely due to dropping too many points on the bill drill. I had a mic with it on the practical side of the house, and I wasn't able to connect with good points. With minor guns, you can't miss fast enough. You certainly can't drop points and expect good scores. So unfortunately, the X5, despite being my 3rd favorite, didn't do so hot. If this were my limited optics setup, I would want to explore different magwell options to make the reloading a bit better, but honestly, the gun is more or less squared away out of the box. In 5th place was the P320 X5. It feels pretty good in hand, but the lack of a manual safety, I do like kind of that memory point of resting a thumb on a manual safety. This doesn't have any manual safeties. It does have a takedown lever, so your support hand can kind of build the same way on the gun every single time. However, the lack of the manual safety just made it feel like I was missing my grip just a little bit. It just didn't inspire the same confidence. Honestly, the trigger being the weakest of the guns that were in play here didn't really make much of a difference. And as always, if I spent time with any of the guns, I'm sure I could shoot them at the same level. This is kind of a failure of the back-to-back-to-back format of looking at these things. But as far as this gun we're concerned for limited optics, the magwell is honestly pretty generous. If you wanted to go, you know, with a bigger magwell, you certainly could. But honestly, the 320 X5 could compete pretty fine in the limited optics division. 4th place was the Tanfoglio. Because of that recurved trigger, I just didn't feel like I could run the gun quickly, and the fundamental of gripping the gun was just a little bit different, so I took a little bit more time trying to build my grip, and I paid for that in the time penalty because it's points divided by time. Realizing that the Stock 2 is not the Tanfoglio for the single action only divisions, but even still, I just love the way that the gun balances. I love the way the gun swings. In order to be a viable carry optics gun, you might have to explore magwell options, which are a little bit different on these production style guns. And I have absolutely no doubt that with some time to acclimate to the pistol and how it likes to be gripped, I could be getting the same performance. In 3rd place was the Bul Armory Air because I felt like I could drive the gun harder. And since we weren't evaluating it over a super long testing period, the mic that I suffered on the practical side tanked the score. If that had connected with an alpha, this gun would have won. And I think that that was just me being a touch overconfident, trying to drive the gun a little bit harder. And as a result, I think I broke the shot just a little bit prematurely, swinging back to the steel target, and that ultimately hurt the score for the Air. In 2nd place was the Vudoo Gunworks Priest, and this is one of the earlier Priest. I think I got this at the beginning of last year. This was one of the first guns back when the build times were only like, I think I had this in like 3 weeks. They built it from ordering it to delivering it was like a 3.5 week wait. And I realize some of you guys watching this right now are going to be upset because the build time on these now is like 6 to 7 months or whatever it is. I can say through looking at the options on the website that people like me's feedback were incorporated into the new guns, because with this particular gun, the manual safety is just too thin. It's not a proper like competition sized safety. I'd want it to be blended a little bit better and a little bit oversized and maybe a little bit higher. So if this was my mainstay in limited optics, I'd explore different manual safety options. But other than that, the gun is pretty much brilliant. I think it's a great gun. And in the #1 spot was the Canik, the Rival-S here. And I honestly did not expect this to be the winner when I was shooting it. All I could think about while I was gripping it was I don't love the geometry of the frame, and I was having to be a lot more intentional with how I seated the gun in my grip. And that slight penalty that I might have paid with speed was rewarded with accuracy because I was focusing on my fundamentals. It got the best hits and it was quick enough to secure the overall win. The cool thing about guns like this is with removable grips, it's super easy to get the gun tailored to your hand. These LOK grips, these are the Veloces, are absolutely fantastic. The gun is super accurate. If this were my limited optics setup, I would just explore different magwell options to make sure I had something that I was comfortable with, but honestly, these guns are really squared away out of the box. The aesthetics may not be for everybody, especially the hard chrome ones. I personally love hard chrome, if you couldn't tell from the video, but the Rival-S is a really awesome gun, and there's a reason that you see a ton of them on the range. But what was probably most interesting about all of this is that the P320 XFive is the heaviest gun, and it is a striker gun that was tested. The lightest weight gun at nearly 40 ounces is the Bul Armory Air. And I can tell you behind the guns, the last thing that I thought about was #1, trigger quality. And I didn't feel like any of the guns, since they're all in kind of that nearly 40 ounce to 50 ounce range, that I wish a gun was heavier or lighter. It didn't so much matter. I think that's kind of a sweet spot for performance on these kind of performance shooting type guns. So say all that to say that people are super concerned. I get a lot of questions of people wanting to know, like, what is the one gun I should be getting for, you know, whatever. And the answer is whichever one you like the most and are willing to practice with. That's really going to be what makes the difference. You can make any of these guns be competitive. Recent nationals results shows us that pretty much any gun can win. Nils Jonasson won the limited division a couple years ago with the polymer version of this gun. It was basically a $500 plastic pistol beating the custom 2011s in 40. So it really does come down to the Indian and not so much the arrow. The single most important piece of advice that I can give you is that just get started competing. You don't know where the holes in your game are until you get out and you start actually trying to compete, and you'll have a much deeper understanding of where your skill set actually is. That's going to be uncomfortable initially because where you think you perform and where you actually perform, there's going to be a gap. And as you continue to train, the gap between your best run and your worst run starts to shrink. And what you really want to do is flatten those out so that you can't fail when you're trying to deploy your pistol skill. And competition is the best way that I know how to get at that. You can do it through, focused training, but most people need that drive of competition, both the reward of beating your friends, but at the same time, fear of the shame of performing poorly and getting mocked by your friends is a really good motivator to actually get out and practice and put the work in. So if you're interested in competing, I've made this playlist that will square you away with what your expectations should be and get you out on the range so you can have a great first match. So check that out here.